Listen closely, because what you're about to hear could change the way you see the world of finance in Arkansas forever. Welcome to The Money Trail, an investigative documentary series that exposes the hidden financial history right beneath our noses. Our focus today is on a tale that has everything: power, greed, and deception. This is the story of what many call the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history. A staggering sum of money vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams. And yet, despite years of investigations and countless court hearings, the truth remains elusive. But who are we to uncover this tangled web of deceit? We are The Money Trail, a team of experienced financial journalists dedicated to unearthing the truth behind hidden financial crimes. Our mission is simple: to follow the money no matter where it leads, and reveal the stories that those in power would prefer to keep buried. In this series, we will delve deep into the case of the missing millions, a complex web of fraud and embezzlement that has rocked the state of Arkansas to its core. We'll explore the colorful cast of characters at the heart of this scandal, from the smooth-talking financier who promised investors the world, to the regulators who turned a blind eye as the scheme unraveled before their very eyes. We'll trace the money trail as it winds its way through a tangled web of shell companies and offshore bank accounts, revealing just how easy it is for the rich and powerful to hide their ill-gotten gains. And we'll expose the devastating impact this crime had on the lives of ordinary Arkansans who lost everything they had worked so hard to build. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. We'll take you on a journey through the dark underbelly of Arkansas finance, revealing truths that will shock and anger you in equal measure, and we promise to follow the money wherever it leads, no matter how high up the chain of command we have to go. This is The Money Trail, and this is the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history. Are you ready to uncover the truth? The biggest financial crime in Arkansas history was not just a theft, but a violation of trust that shook the very foundations of this great state. At its core, this crime involved the embezzlement of over $50 million from one of the most venerable institutions in Arkansas, the Little Rock Credit Union. From 2010 to 2017, a man named Carlos Newsman, who served as both president and CEO of the credit union, systematically looted its coffers for his own personal gain. He accomplished this feat through an intricate web of fraudulent financial transactions, often using the names of unsuspecting members to create fake loans that he then diverted into his own accounts. The impact on the state was profound. Thousands of hardworking Arkansans, many of whom had been loyal customers of the Little Rock Credit Union for decades, suddenly found themselves facing an uncertain financial future. Their savings had vanished, their trust in the institution that they had once held dear shattered into 1,000 pieces. But the consequences of Newsman's crimes went far beyond the credit union itself. The loss of $50 million was a significant blow to the state's economy, with ripple effects that were felt in every corner of Arkansas. Small businesses struggled to secure loans, families found it harder to buy homes or start new ventures, and the state's overall economic growth slowed to a crawl. Worse still, Newsman's actions cast a long shadow over the entire financial industry in Arkansas. Trust is the lifeblood of any financial institution, and once that trust is broken, it can take years to rebuild. The Little Rock Credit Union was not the only victim here. Every bank, credit union, and investment firm in the state suffered as a result of Newsman's actions. In the end, justice was served. Newsman was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison and ordered to pay back every penny he had stolen. But the scars left by his crimes will take time to heal. The story of the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history is a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed, corruption, and the erosion of trust, one that we cannot afford to forget. The story of the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history revolves around three key players: James Newsman, the mastermind, his associate, Robert McAllister, and the unsuspecting victim, First State Bank of DeWitt. James Newsman was a respected figure in the local business community, serving as the CEO of First State Bank of DeWitt. However, beneath this facade of respectability, Newsman harbored greed and corruption that would eventually lead to his downfall. Between 2011 and 2015, he embezzled over $13 million from the bank, using a complex web of fraudulent schemes to cover his tracks. Robert McAllister was Newsman's right-hand man, playing a crucial role in executing the crime. He created fake bank accounts and wrote unauthorized checks, helping Newsman siphon off millions of dollars from the bank. In exchange for his services, McAllister received over $1 million in illicit payments. The unsuspecting victim in this case was First State Bank of DeWitt, a small community bank with assets totaling just $130 million. Newsman's fraudulent activities went undetected for years, allowing him to steal a staggering 10% of the bank's total assets. Newsman and McAllister were connected through their roles at the bank, but their relationship went beyond mere employment. The two men had been friends for decades, having grown up together in the small town of DeWitt, Arkansas. This long-standing bond made it easier for Newsman to manipulate McAllister into carrying out his fraudulent schemes. The fallout from Newsman's crimes was devastating. The bank was left reeling, forced to shore up its finances and regain the trust of its customers. Meanwhile, Newsman and McAllister faced criminal charges for their roles in the scheme. In the end, justice was served. Newsman was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison and ordered to pay back every penny he had stolen. McAllister received a lesser sentence of 5 years probation and was required to pay restitution, but the scars left by their crimes will take time to heal. The story of the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history is a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed, corruption, and the erosion of trust, one that we cannot afford to forget. The mastermind behind the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history was a man named Randy McAllister. As the CEO of HealthMark, a home healthcare provider, McAllister had access to millions of dollars in Medicaid funds. Between 2014 and 2017, he embezzled over $13 million from the company's accounts, using it to fund a lavish lifestyle complete with luxury cars, private jets, and expensive real estate. McAllister's scheme was complex but well executed. He created shell companies and used them to submit fraudulent invoices to HealthMark for services that were never provided. These bogus claims totaled millions of dollars, and McAllister made sure they went unnoticed by manipulating HealthMark's internal accounting system. To further cover his tracks, McAllister siphoned the stolen funds through a network of bank accounts in multiple states. He even hired money launderers to help him disguise the source of the ill-gotten gains. But despite his best efforts, investigators were eventually able to trace the money back to its original source, HealthMark's Medicaid accounts. The scale of McAllister's fraud was staggering, but what made it truly shocking was how long he managed to get away with it. For years, he deceived employees, investors, and regulators, all while living a life of luxury on other people's money. In the end, it took a team of dedicated investigators to unravel his web of deceit and bring him to justice. But the damage had already been done. HealthMark was left bankrupt, and hundreds of employees lost their jobs. The state of Arkansas was forced to absorb millions of dollars in losses, which ultimately came out of taxpayers' pockets. And perhaps most tragically, the trust that once existed between patients, healthcare providers, and government officials was shattered, leaving a legacy of suspicion and mistrust that may take years to repair. The story of Randy McAllister is a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and corruption in our financial system. It reminds us that hidden behind every balance sheet and income statement are real people whose lives can be devastated by fraud and deceit. And it serves as a stark reminder that, when it comes to protecting our money and our values, there is no substitute for vigilance, transparency, and the rule of law. The investigation into what would become known as the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history was a complex and challenging endeavor. Led by the Securities Division of the Arkansas Attorney General's Office, the team faced numerous obstacles and roadblocks as they worked to unravel the web of deceit woven by former investment advisor James Douglas Allen. Allen had been operating a Ponzi scheme since at least 2010, defrauding investors out of millions of dollars. His clients, many of them elderly and unsuspecting, were led to believe that their money was being invested in safe, conservative instruments like government bonds and certificates of deposit. In reality, Allen was using the funds to finance his lavish lifestyle, complete with luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and multiple homes. The first challenge facing investigators was simply getting a handle on the scope of the fraud. With dozens of victims and millions of dollars in losses, it was clear that this was no ordinary case of investment mismanagement. But tracking down all of the relevant financial records and piecing together the timeline of events proved to be a daunting task. Compounding the problem was Allen's own lack of cooperation. Despite facing mounting evidence of his wrongdoing, he refused to provide investigators with access to his records or submit to questioning. This forced the Securities Division to seek court orders and subpoenas, further slowing down the investigation. Another major roadblock was the fact that many of Allen's victims were hesitant to come forward. Fearful of losing even more money or facing public embarrassment, they opted to stay silent rather than report the fraud. This made it difficult for investigators to get a complete picture of the damage caused by Allen's actions. Despite these challenges, however, the Securities Division persisted. They worked tirelessly to track down financial records, interview witnesses, and build a case against Allen. And in 2015, their efforts paid off when Allen was arrested and charged with multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. The trial was a landmark moment in Arkansas financial history, shining a light on the dangers of unchecked greed and corruption. And for the victims of Allen's scheme, it offered a glimmer of hope that they might finally see some measure of justice. After a lengthy trial, former investment advisor Kenneth Allen was found guilty on multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering in 2017. The court heard how Allen had defrauded over 100 investors out of more than $18 million through his company, Allen & Company. The judge handed down a sentence of 17 years and 6 months, one of the most severe punishments ever given for financial crimes in Arkansas. This stern sentence reflected both the scale of Allen's fraudulent activities and the devastating impact they'd had on so many lives. But what about restitution? For many of Allen's victims, this was the question that mattered most. They wanted to know if they would ever see any of their lost money again. The court ordered Allen to pay over $18 million in restitution, but collecting this amount has proven challenging. Assets need to be located, liquidated, and distributed among the victims, a process that can take years. To date, only a fraction of the total owed has been returned to the rightful owners. This outcome highlights a larger issue within our legal system. While convictions and sentences send an important message, they don't always result in full restitution for victims. In cases like Allen's, where the defendant lacks sufficient assets to cover the debt, justice can feel incomplete. Nevertheless, the trial of Kenneth Allen marked a turning point in Arkansas financial history. It served as a warning to would-be fraudsters and offered some solace to those who had been deceived. And while not every victim may have received their money back, they at least saw the man responsible held accountable for his actions. As we continue to follow the money trail, we're reminded that financial crimes often leave deep scars, affecting not just individuals, but entire communities. Uncovering these stories and understanding their aftermath is crucial in our fight against greed and corruption. The story of the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact such crimes can have on individuals and communities. The man responsible, James Paul Hobby, was not only held accountable, but also became a symbol of greed and corruption. This case highlighted significant gaps in our financial regulations, leading to calls for reform. One crucial lesson learned is the need for stricter oversight of investment firms and their practices. In response, Arkansas lawmakers passed the Arkansas Securities Act in 1997, which strengthened investor protection measures and increased penalties for securities fraud. The ripple effects of this financial crime extended far beyond Arkansas's borders. State-level regulatory changes served as a model for federal reforms aimed at preventing similar crimes across the nation. The Securities and Exchange Commission adopted new rules requiring investment firms to provide more transparent disclosures, ensuring that investors can make informed decisions about their financial futures. However, despite these efforts, many victims of Hobby's scheme were left with significant financial losses. According to court documents, over 1,500 investors lost approximately $40 million in this Ponzi-like operation. While some victims received partial restitution through legal proceedings, many were forced to absorb the financial hit themselves. This story also underscores the importance of financial literacy and due diligence when making investment decisions. Investors must be vigilant and thoroughly research any potential opportunities before parting with their hard-earned money. By empowering individuals with knowledge, we can help protect them from falling victim to similar scams in the future. In conclusion, the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history left an indelible mark on both the state's financial landscape and its collective psyche. The lessons learned have led to meaningful changes in regulatory frameworks and investor behavior. However, as long as greed exists, so too will the risk of financial crimes. As investigative journalists, it is our responsibility to continue uncovering these stories, ensuring that those who seek to exploit our financial systems are held accountable for their actions. As we've unraveled this complex tale of deceit and exploitation, it's become clear that the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history is also a cautionary tale for us all. The story of Summit Financial Group and its former CEO, James Rick Duther, serves as a stark reminder of the ever-present dangers lurking within our financial systems. In 2013, after years of meteoric growth fueled by fraudulent activities, Summit Financial Group crashed, leaving countless investors with nothing but empty promises and shattered dreams. Duggar's scheme involved manipulating financial records, misappropriating funds, and peddling false hope to thousands of unsuspecting victims. By the time the SEC stepped in, Duggar had already embezzled over $18 million, destroying countless lives in the process. But this story doesn't just end with punishment for Duggar or recompense for his victims, it serves as a call to action for each one of us. Financial literacy and vigilance are crucial components of protecting ourselves from becoming victims of similar schemes. By understanding how these crimes occur, we can better safeguard our hard-earned money against those who seek to exploit us. Institutions like the SEC play a vital role in uncovering and prosecuting financial criminals, but they cannot do it alone. As informed citizens, we must demand transparency from the financial institutions we trust with our livelihoods. We should never be afraid to ask questions or seek second opinions when making important financial decisions. Moreover, understanding the warning signs of fraudulent behavior can help us steer clear of potential pitfalls. Be wary of unrealistic returns, high-pressure sales tactics, and investments that lack transparency or regulatory oversight. Remember, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The Summit Financial Group case may have concluded with Duggar behind bars, but the fight against financial crime is far from over. As investigative journalists, it's our responsibility to continue exposing these stories and ensuring that those who seek to exploit our financial systems are held accountable for their actions. And as informed citizens, it's our duty to stay vigilant, educated, and engaged in the fight against financial crime. In this era of shadowy schemes and hidden dangers, let us remember the lessons learned from the biggest financial crime in Arkansas history. Together, we can ensure that greed no longer goes unchecked and that justice prevails for all victims of financial exploitation.